Hello, I'm Dane Rose, and I'm making this class as a alternative for some of the classes I've been teaching at the College of Marin and through Redwood adult education programs over the last few years. You can always come to this portion of Mystical Landscapes to see what I'm offering in the next few weeks and months. It's under the Classes and Books tab on mysticallandscapes.com. And what I want to do in this video is give you a little bit of the overview, some of the things that I think are most important that I try to weave into the classes, and also teach you how to use the resources. And I may not be doing as much teaching at either College of Marin or Redwood because one of the main reasons I have always taught in the 20 or 30 classes I've led and researched over the years is to polish my own learning. There's nothing like learning through teaching, and so from time to time I like to go through a process of refining new material and presenting it to the community. But after a while it gets repetitive. So part of this is to do as a one-time recording some of the things that I think are important that I may not be offering as a curriculum. So the first thing I want to do is tell you a little bit about me and the expertise that I'm bringing. And so I began over 20 years ago when I was 17, and what I noticed was that both the biggest potential and the biggest problems in landscapes were in the area of design. And what would happen is I was an installer before I had design expertise, is I would be called out to clients to help with an installation, and I would very quickly realize that there was not a clear dialogue between the client and the designer about the values and about other logistical needs that really ought to drive the project. And as a result of that, what I developed was the landscape questionnaire. And if you go to the design section here and scroll down, you'll see a download that you can get. And what the purpose of this document is, it has many purposes, but the gist of it is it has eliminated the experience that I used to often have in which an entire design that might cost anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 might need to be redone for the simple reason that in the client-designer dialogue, certain things such as the budget or the amount of parking or the budget for maintenance or whether or not there would be a boat or something in the project, certain things didn't get discussed. And as a result, it required expensive redos as well as stress and going over budget during the project as these things came up. And so this questionnaire is designed to benefit the environment by eliminating change orders. It's designed to reduce stress. It's also intended as a couple communication document. Because if you fill this out fully and your spouse has a look at it and fills their answers out, you'll see very clearly before you work with a professional where you converge and where you differ. And so this document is actually the thing that I think is among the most useful steps before doing any major landscaping. And it's designed to cover both values as well as logistical considerations because while landscaping on the one hand is a giant canvas and a beautiful piece of art, It's also something that affects your real estate value. It's something that affects the safety of your family. It's something that affects your privacy. It's something that affects your relationship with the city and codes. It's something that affects your drainage. It's something that affects neighbor relationships. And so the key is to bring all of those things clearly into focus as you design something. And in doing so, if you create something that's really beautiful, it will not need to get redone and changed over the years in the way that so many poorly designed landscapes unfold following that kind of erratic process where you might actually have something redone over a 20-year period 3 to 5 times at a tremendous waste in resources and money. And so this is the first step that I made in that process, and so it's also one of the places that I would encourage you to begin. And since developing the questionnaire and teaching multiple classes, I've come up with a book that I've read, and let's see, where can we go on Amazon. Go to Successfully Landscaping Your Marin Home. You can get this book on Amazon. As you can see, it's getting some good reviews here. It's available as a Kindle edition. And one of the other pieces that is important to fall into place if you're doing your own landscape design is actually understanding some of the logistics so that you can design with efficiency and practicality in mind. And so the first part of this book is all about practical installations and how to save money and how to maximize real estate value. But it's the second part that I'm going to be focusing more on in this virtual class, and that's the design portion of the book. And the most important part of that is actually defining and clarifying what success is for you. And it's one of the more powerful and clarifying things for both if you work with a designer, for them to understand, and also for you and your partner to understand, is what's driving the project. And so on different landscape projects and with different people, there's different values, and it's really important for everyone involved to understand what those are. So, for one person, it might be saving money right now is a really key value, and so you might put a 10 on that. Your spouse may see that as a 2 or a 3 on a 1 to 10 scale, with kind of 0 being not at all important and 10 being very important. There's increasing resale value. If it's going to be a home that you'll live in for the rest of your life and you really don't care what other people think, then that might get a 0. But if you're thinking that you're going to be definitely selling in the next 1 to 2 years, and the whole basis for spending $100,000 on a project is the belief that it's going to dramatically improve the value of the home, that should get a 10. You've got lowering maintenance, keeping overall cost to a certain budget, and this is different than saving money now, because you may have a certain amount in savings or a certain access to a line of credit, and the key is just, it's really important not to exceed that total amount, but whether it's now or later doesn't matter as much. And so these values are the core values that I've noticed underlie every project. And some of them are in a natural tension with one another. Pleasing my partner's spouse, might get an 8 or a 9, but be in tension with saving money now. And so the reason you give a number to reflect what's really important to you is that it will help you make conscious decisions that are in alignment with the values you'd like to be behind the project. So I think that's really the place to begin. The questionnaire will help you answer all the different variables that are important to you. And in the book, I've included a copy of the landscape questionnaire, and you can always you can always follow the link and download it from the website, because it's a little bit easier to fill in, or if you get a hard copy of the book, you can just fill your answers in right here. So the purpose of the of reading the first portion of the book, in which I discuss a lot of things such as maximizing functional property potential, or irrigation, or talking about what drives the cost, because one of the things that I've realized, and the reason I wrote this chapter, was just to help you understand how your decisions and choices will directly affect the cost, and why you can't just look at a slope and say, well, this is what's a ballpark cost for landscaping this. As I show in the example, it can vary hundreds of %, just depending on what you do. So if you read this book, it'll help ground you in the logistics, but that's only going to take you so far. And the real, I think, important part of the book is in deciding how and what to do with that information. So there's a couple of different ways to proceed, and this can get a little bit heady, and so I wanted to let you know of a couple of resources that I've prepared for you. And the first one is a resource that's at the bottom of the book pages here, and this is a fun project that I did of taking over 1,000 photographs of different buildings and things in Marin, with a goal of helping you see the full range of choices in a given category and see what's possible. And so let's take a look at walls, for example. These are, every photo is a photo that I took in Marin. Most of these are not my landscapes. I just wanted to give you a sense of the impact of something. So wood walls are, a very popular way, material used is, you'll see this type of design, and the county will supply you with a free drawing showing you how this is done. And this is about in its midlife. What will happen over the next maybe 10 years is, these will rot out, this will, fall forward. And while I appreciate the efficiency and speed of, building a wall like this, I don't like the fact that it's not very attractive and does not last as long as stone does. So you can see another wall like this, which is dry stack. This stacks very well. There's no mortar used. And this will be here in 200 years. It's quite same height, same little snapshot, but it's quite interesting. Now this particular wall is going to be a lot more expensive, but up here you see an example of a broken concrete wall. So that material is even cheaper than wood. It's totally free. And this also illustrates a good strategy where in important areas that you look at closely, you might use a higher end material. And then for something that's maybe 50 to 100 feet away, or let's say that you're up at the top here looking this way, and so you never see the face, you might use a free material like broken concrete, both of which will outlast wood by hundreds of years. So, but those are just my thoughts. The important thing is for you to have a sense of all the options available to you. Here's another unusual wall where these squares are left and soil kind of pours through, and you can plant to create more of a vertical garden if you so chose. They're just letting weeds grow through. But the whole point of this project is to empower you to actually see what you like. This, by the way, is Sonoma fieldstone. So from an ecology point of view, there's the least amount of energy of all the different stones available to you in Marin used in producing and shipping this stone. It's just fieldstone from Sonoma fields, which means it's 3 to 5 times less expensive than any other stone available. So ecology and cost go hand in hand for this particular stone. And the downside, it's not quite as distinctive as some of the other and more expensive stones. But this tool here, which you can see by following the chapters here, you'll find some are more populated than others. I've got lots of different photos of interesting walls. This is one of the more expensive walls I ran into with a higher end flagstone that's mortared onto a concrete stone with a brick coping, and then given a wet look with a high gloss sealer. So you've got a full range to choose from. But the important thing is to know what's out there before you just go ahead and do what the neighbors did, because many times you can do something that's less money or less energy or better for the environment that you actually like better. And very often you just don't know what's possible. And that's partly where a good designer can come in, but it's also where looking at photos can come in. This is a high wood intensive wall, but it's also a lot softer than just an 8-foot concrete wall, and it, if planted properly, could be completely covered in plants. So it was quite fun for me as a designer to peruse around Marin and see all the different options that are being utilized. Other chapters are less expansive because I ran into less options, but these are all samples of garbage can enclosures to make the garbage cans more functional on the street, so different levels of samples for each chapter. But I would encourage you to look at each of the areas that you're want to look at for your project, and then scroll through and see all the different options that other people are doing in Marin, not necessarily as what you should do, but as a nice starting point. And I want to give you a sense of some of the benefits that can come from that. And let's take a look at this here. So garage doors are often ignored, but really they're a big blank canvas that you can paint and play with. Similarly, driveways are often poured as monolithic slabs, but imagine how much uglier this would be if it was, just a cracked bit of gray concrete. And what I want you to see in a picture like this is not whether you personally like it, but how creativity and an idea can sometimes save you more money and give you more of what you want than just doing, the first expensive idea that comes to mind. So these are very plain, handmade garage doors made in 4x8 sheets of plywood, and these doors probably cost around $300 in materials to make, so much less than many other garage doors. But they've compensated for that by bringing in a little bit of artistry. Many people would find something like this more playful and interesting than a $2,000 or $3,000 garage door. And this is just $50 worth of paint. And so you want to find those sweet spots, those areas where you can do something for a lot less that brings you a lot more personal value. And this doesn't need to be it. But this principle holds true. In the book, I call it the principle of minimum effort for maximum result. So have a look through here, and this will give you a visual sense to be able to compare what's out there and see what you like. But in addition to that, the purpose of the book is really to teach you how to think, and how to think with some discipline about how to align your decisions with your values. And so that's why I'm most excited about the design portion in the book. And I want to, actually go to this point. This is a little intro from my College of Marin, my College of Marin class. And let's see if I need to turn that. Let's see if this will record here. So my favorite format when teaching design is to spend maybe 3 or 4 hours talking theory and going over the book and assigning some homework, and then to go to one of the students' gardens, and we as a class all practice what we're learning in the garden of the student. And so this was a little video. This was we did a hat drawing, and Alistair here won the position of the student whose garden we all visited. And I wanted to show you this because I wanted you to see how pivotal values are in a project, because everything about this project was reinvented and designed for Alistair, the student. And so I'll play you a bit of this video and just to give you a feeling for that. So in a few weeks, one of you will have the good fortune to be picked as the sample or experimental design garden of all the students. And I'm making this video now at the location of last year's students. So this is Alistair's house, and his name was drawn out of the hat as the garden we're going to go visit. And I thought it would be great to show you this garden because it illustrates how important design is on a number of different levels. Now, one of the things that you're all going to be doing or have done is filled out the landscape questionnaire. And one of the things Alistair had on his questionnaire was that he wanted to do this project himself. That was actually a big core value, was a fun and exciting thing to do himself. And I looked at this project, and I want you to pan around and take in the whole site. And it it goes way off to the left there beyond what we can see. I looked at this project and I thought, Alistair's one guy, he can't do this by himself. There's a lot of grading and heavy equipment operation that needs to be done. But Alistair grew up on a Scottish estate operating farm equipment. And so the thought of buying him this excavator over here was not too intimidating. And so I knew that that was the perfect machine for the job. I used to own one of these, and up in Washington State where I did a lot of land development and equipment, operating this one machine would save me 9 people, nine laborers, and allow me to single-handedly do an enormous amount on the site. And what this machine is it's got a thumb, so it can grab plants and stumps and rocks. It's got a 4-foot bucket for the large grading. It's got a blade. It's got an air-conditioned cab. And I worked out that Alistair could buy it used and sell it again 2 years later for $5,000 to $10,000 less at worst case scenario, or possibly the same price as he bought it. And so our design relationship actually began with Alistair hiring me to buy him this machine, to find a good machine and get it on site. And then the design didn't stop there, because the next part of it was we worked out, because this machine is actually helpful for me in my work sometimes, the fee that I charged Alistair to broker the machine is actually being used in free use of the machine. And so there's a win-win there. And what I'm trying to illustrate is that design is not just a piece of paper. It's not pretty drawing. It's actually taking a project and bringing it into alignment with your values in as many ways as possible. And so, and another thing that we've been looking at here was with a goal of keeping costs down on an enormously big project is, what's the design of bringing all the materials we need on site with as little cost as possible? And so what you're seeing is piles of broken concrete that were delivered for free. And you can see the first wall being built here. You're seeing piles of concrete over on this side that's going to be used for the inside of what is a wonderful pond. All of this is a area of patchwork recycled carpet, again delivered for free. And so one of the, and this enormous pond, which you might think is extraordinarily expensive, with Alistair doing a lot of the work himself and following my guidelines on how to use recycled materials that just happen to be in alignment with his values. We're doing this whole pond for about the same cost as professionally installing a similar area of lawn. And then you might think, well, wow, what an enormous waste of water and the maintenance and all this. But as it turns out, once you have a properly lined pond, and we're going to be using, putting the liner in the next few days, once you've got a properly lined pond, a big area like this will actually use less water than the area in front. This whole area where you see the sand pile and the concrete, all of this is going to be lawn, because we needed some area for play and also as contrast to the pond. But that lawn is going to be higher maintenance, even with a riding mower, than the water. It's also going to use more water than the pond, because there's very little water that evaporates off of a pond once it's filled. But a lawn in the summer needs to be regularly watered. Of course, in the winter, the rainwater will keep both the pond and the lawn wet. And so we've designed not only a design that includes, European style, very low maintenance shrubberies and rhododendrons in the back, a beautiful lawn that is in scale with this enormous pond and this enormous house and this enormous piece of land.
But we've also designed the working relationship, starting with the buying of the machine and doing some consulting with Alistair, and having me do some of the more complicated or intricate bits of the irrigation system and perhaps some other things. That working relationship has been as important of a design detail as the design of the garden itself.
So I think you get the idea, and what I wanted to illustrate is how dramatically different a project can go when values have been clearly defined. And so Alistair put learning and building skills and doing a project himself as a 10. He also put saving money as a 10 and increasing real estate value as a 10. And so those 3 10s drove the whole project. And if we go back to the video and we look at the kind of the scope of the whole thing, what's really interesting is how we've basically, this is just half of the whole project, but we've taken something that would have been maybe a $250,000 project and brought it down to a $60,000 project with Alistair doing it himself and having a blast. And then I'll just close here by showing you some of the
American
results.
And save $300 off of his can be quite valuable.
So this is some progress reports as we go through. And this is the finished photos. So it's really exciting when you take a project through this thought process and end up with savings and learning and huge increases in property values and fun. And that's where, but that's just Alistair's values. That may have nothing to do with you. But on his whole project, it was about helping him get hundreds of yards of free material, how to learn to operate equipment, how to get all the broken concrete and the bark chips, wood chips from chipping agencies at no cost, how to buy the lowest size of plants, for the least amount of money, etc. And that's just what Alistair gets off on. And so, we succeeded on that. But I want to take you now into another important part of the the design thought process, which is just the process of making good decisions. And I talk a little bit about how to integrate your values in this chapter of the book. And then I'm looking for the So this will teach you how to create a scaled as-built here, which is not as important as you might think. There's a big emphasis in design on the accurate scaled drawing, but that's actually not half as important as having a well-integrated thought process and then following through that with integrity. But I do talk about how to create a scaled as-built so that you can design on, and it can be quite helpful. But what I really want to talk about are the design principles, and these apply to every decision. They're what I use all the time as I analyze hundreds of different possibilities. And the first one is minimum effort for maximum result. And that is that if you have a specific objective, let's say it's lowering maintenance, and all things are equal, you always take the easier path. And that's where a designer can be helpful in as well as looking at those photos of all your different options, is so that you see what your choices are, what your values are, and then you can pick the easiest way to achieve the result that you're looking for. And that's really important because if you just throw money and maintenance and energy at something, there's thousands of ways to do just about anything. But there's usually one or two ways that are just beautifully elegant, and you want to find those ways. And the great news is those are always the less expensive. You get the most for the least when you follow that path. Form follows function is another of those principles. And this is important. Let's take the example of a pathway. Like through a parking lot. You go shopping and they have all these little curbs running through the center of the area, and people tread on the plants because there aren't little pathways that take you the easiest, in the easiest direction where you want to go. So if you want someone to respect the boundary of a bed or a border, it's important to erect either a real obstacle, or to create a path that takes people where they want to go efficiently and comfortably. And so that's an example of form following function. Or if you have a driveway and you have a certain type of style of car that you want, and you're constructing a turnaround, you want to imagine how many people are going to be parked there 90% of the time, and design the parking lot around the size and turn radius of your vehicles, rather than cringe and feel awkward every time you turn your car around when you're worried about dinging it up on a cramped stone wall. So that's the basis of form follows function. The principle of relationship means that the best designs have common principles which integrate the garden. So it's as if the front garden is aware of the back garden, and it doesn't become a hodgepodge of many different styles and voices that don't really create a consistent presentation. And you want to think of it as a book. If you write a book and page 2 has nothing to do with page 1 and page 3 has nothing to do with page 2, you're not going to read the book. It's not going to engage you. For the book to be a real masterpiece, every page needs to have something to do with what's going on in the other pages. And that's true of the different areas of landscaping. Balance of attention is quite important. Every space that we're in either feels lopsided or uncomfortable, or feels, centering and balanced. And so in this principle here, you explore the way that elevation, light, line, color, height, sound, movement, and discomfort all shift your attention in different directions. And so that's an important element to include in any design choice. Scale is one of the more important things, and it's also the biggest areas that homeowners tend to get wrong, because your natural scale that you'll tend to design with is what you see 2 to 3 feet away from you. Because let's say this is a bed here and you're standing right here, you're paying attention to the O, the R, and the Y, because that's 3 to 5 feet from your body when you're in that area. But most of the time, in a whole landscape, you'll be viewing things from different distances. And so let's say that if we go to that video project with Alistair, and kind of go back to the last little bit here. So Alistair thought this lake was too big when we were designing it, because if he's standing right here, 70 feet across, feels huge. But that's because he's comparing it to his own body. When I'm designing a landscape like this, I'm comparing it as a composition to the house. The house is the backdrop, and the mountains are the backdrop to the house. So the house is in scale with the mountains. The deck is in scale with the house. The walls are in scale with the deck. The lawn is in scale with the house, which is this whole mass of yellow is about the size of this whole mass of green. And the pond then becomes in scale. So overall, there's no one element in this picture that dominates. But the tendency we have as human beings with an untrained design eye is to think very small. And so, like, these are all one planting here, and here's another planting here. If you're standing right there, it seems boring. It's like, wow, all these one plant, why not some variety? And in truth, this could take more variety. But the point is that you don't look at it as one plant when you're over here looking back. You look at it when you're looking down from the deck or from an upper window or from across the pond here. You're looking at it as a unit, as a bed. You're not looking at it as one plant and one plant and one plant and one plant. So that's the principle of scale, that you want things to be in relationship with the sizes around them. And this whole thing would shrink way down if this were a little fenced-in backyard. Everything about it, the wall, the pond, the lawn, the plantings would all become much smaller. So that's an important principle. And the next thing we have is a balance between boredom and chaos, formality and informality. You want to have certain things that integrate the garden. You also want to have things that bring interest. And so there's different ways of applying that. And then finally, there's choosing a style and choosing some themes. You can have, an Asian style, a cottage style, etc. And then when you pick themes, you want to pick themes that relate to the style, that relate to the house, that relate to what you want and your values. You can have color themes and shape themes and themes of minimalism or themes of chaos. There's many different ways to pick a theme. But that's kind of a core, I guess, a core tool to use that. And what a theme really does is when you go to the nursery and you're confronted with 5,000 plants and you like, 100 or 200 of them, it's going to become a hodgepodge in most cases if you just randomly say 2 of these and 1 of these, etc. So to protect you from that hodgepodge, you pick a theme. You might, if you have a minimalist theme, you might say this will be my white flower garden. And then you pick out your key white flowering plants, and then you add other smaller plants that look good with those key plants until you've built your theme of a white flowered garden that works really well with itself. And then you pick another theme. For example, in Allie's garden here, we've got the red rose garden and the white rose garden, over here. But lavender connects them all with a lavender border. And this whole project is part of a low-budget recycling grand estate theme. That's kind of the style and themes that we're going for. So these are some of the some of the different principles and thought processes that you'll want to use. And next in the book, there's looking at things in stages, I talk more extensively about how to go through the the design process, where to ask for help. There's also a very important process of looking at all the local landscape resources, and so at the back of the book I have well, this is a fun little thing. Alistair used this to save $300 off of his American Soils order. Let's see where there's a section in here on the different places that I use to buy materials and why. That's certainly helpful. I do encourage you to read these things about should you hire a professional and pros and cons of hiring a professional, etc. There's lots of different stuff. Yeah, this is my resource of most of the projects and or material vendors that I use and why. And all of this is you want to synthesize the practical information of what works and who provides what kinds of service and what are some of the problems that can come up dealing with different vendors and how to protect yourself from those problems. So you want to I guess familiarize yourself with that and include it as much as possible in your design, because ultimately a landscape project is about having fun. It's about giving you more of something you value than you can do in any other way. And with that, I want to close with a certain critical thinking challenge, and that is to ask yourself if the budget and the time and the project you've allowed is going to bring you more fun, both in the short and the long term, and more of what you value than something else you could be doing with your money. Because, just to give you an example, I meet a lot of overworked, overbusy, stressed out executive types. And often they're perpetually locked into a renovation cycle of their homes and landscapes in a way that isn't really necessary. There's nothing demanding that this or that be done at this point, but it's actually adding to the stress of their lives. And if I meet someone like that, I'll encourage them to consider the alternatives, including taking a vacation and forgetting about the landscape for a few years, because it's about quality of life and it's about well-being. And so that's just a thought I'd like to leave you with. I hope this process has been helpful. And in the landscape classes that I teach, for example, at the College of Marin, the next stage after you doing your homework and going through all of this would generally be to meet in a student's garden and practice it. And I added that into the class because I always found that the student who had the practice garden, like Alistair's, got by far the most value out of the class. And it's not surprising. It's because to really get the most value out of a design, your eye needs to be trained to see possibility. And in the case of a good designer who's been doing something for 10 or 20 years and seen thousands of different ways of doing each thing, it's very, very typical that you'll see a project or a way to do things that a student has not considered. And so in one of my recent classes, just to give you an example, a student was asking me about how to construct a trellis that was going to block the view of a tenant's access out into their courtyard. And so they were kind of interested in getting bids on an arbor. But the arbor was not going to be very sightly or very practical. And the whole point was to discourage the tenant from coming into the owner's living room and garden space. And I suggested the option of putting a film on the windows and changing the lock on the door that exited there, which was a $100 expense rather than a $2,000 expense. And that did the job more effectively than any design of trellis and pathway that they had been considering would have done. So a savings of $1,900. And you just need one or two of those ideas in a whole project to more than pay for the whole design. And so I've always said that good designs save money, and that where money gets spent is it's in the installation. So if you want to do some of the work yourselves, that's great, and the book will really help you with that. But I would encourage you to consult with a good designer before you spend any major amount of effort and money, simply because a good designer will probably come up with ideas that may save you hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands. And so towards that end, you're welcome to, when you've got your design, give me a call to have me come out and review it. I have what's called a design taster, where it's just a one-time 1 hour cost of $150. And when I do the College of Marin class, it takes more time because we're dealing with a lot of students, but that's usually a $120 to $160 class, and you're not guaranteed to be the student that's picked as the sample garden. So this is an option: watching this video, reading the book, and then having me or another designer do a design taster that can take you to that same point. So good luck on your project, and I'll say goodbye.